The funniest thing about arrogance is that it never sees the lesson coming. The grand ballroom of the Hawthorne Foundation Gala shimmered beneath crystal chandeliers worth more than most homes. Soft music drifted through the air. Waiters moved between tables carrying silver trays. Manhattan's wealthiest guests laughed over champagne and million-dollar conversations. At the center of it all stood Ethan Brooks, 35 years old, self-made millionaire, the kind of man magazines called visionary and rivals called unstoppable. Wherever Ethan went, attention followed. People leaned closer when he spoke. They laughed a little harder at his jokes. They watched him the way people watch fireworks. Bright, loud, impossible to ignore. Tonight was no different. Dressed in a perfectly tailored black tuxedo, Ethan stood surrounded by investors, celebrities, and business leaders. Every story he told drew another round of laughter. Every comment earned approval. He was enjoying himself, perhaps a little too much. Across the room, Olivia Carter carried a tray of sparkling water through the crowd. She wore the standard black and white uniform required by the hotel. Her blonde hair was neatly tied back. Her expression remained calm despite the chaos around her. She moved quietly, efficiently, almost invisibly. Most guests never looked directly at her. They accepted their drinks, continued their conversations, forgot she existed the second she walked away. Olivia preferred it that way. The less attention she attracted, the easier the evening became. But fate has a strange habit of interrupting peaceful plans. The live band finished a song near the ballroom stage. Applause echoed through the room. The lead singer announced a brief intermission while musicians adjusted equipment. During the pause, Ethan noticed Olivia passing nearby with a tray. One of his friends nudged him with a grin. "You think you can get anyone in this room to say yes to anything?" Ethan smirked. "Probably." The table laughed. Another friend pointed toward Olivia. "What about her?" Ethan followed the gesture. He barely knew why he did it. Maybe boredom. Maybe pride. Maybe the dangerous confidence that comes from rarely hearing the word no. "Watch this," he said. Olivia stopped beside the table as a guest requested another drink. Before she could leave, Ethan stood. The movement immediately drew attention. Conversation slowed. Nearby guests turned their heads. They always did when Ethan Brooks became the center of a moment. His smile widened. "Miss," he called. Olivia looked up politely. "Yes, sir." "The band is taking requests later." Several people at the table exchanged amused looks. Ethan continued. "How about a dance?" A few guests chuckled. Olivia blinked once. Calmly, Ethan leaned back with playful confidence. "Come on. Surely you can dance." More laughter followed. Not cruel, but not kind either. The kind of laughter that assumes it already knows how the story ends. For a moment, the ballroom seemed to hold its breath. Olivia glanced around the room. At the expensive gowns, the polished shoes, the smiling faces waiting for her reaction. Then her eyes returned to Ethan. Her expression never changed. No embarrassment, no anger, no panic, just quiet stillness. The kind that often appears right before something unexpected happens. And somewhere beneath the glow of crystal chandeliers and flashing cameras, a lesson had already begun walking toward the spotlight. The laughter lingered for only a few seconds before the ballroom slowly returned to its conversations, but something had changed. Olivia could feel it. Curious eyes followed her as she moved between tables. Guests who had ignored her all evening now watched her a little longer. Ethan returned to his seat wearing the same confident smile, convinced the moment was over. To him, it had been harmless entertainment. A joke. A brief distraction during another glamorous evening. Olivia continued serving drinks without reacting. Her calmness only made the encounter more puzzling. Most people would have blushed. Some would have become angry. Others might have rushed away embarrassed. She had done none of those things. She simply continued working. Across the ballroom, Ethan found himself glancing toward her more than once. He was not sure why. Perhaps because she had not given him the reaction he expected. Perhaps because her eyes had held no resentment. No admiration either. Just a strange confidence. The kind that did not need approval. Meanwhile, Olivia moved through the crowd with practiced ease. Years of hotel work had taught her how to disappear when necessary. Yet there had been a time when disappearing was impossible. There had been a time when bright lights followed her everywhere. When audiences filled entire theaters. When people purchased tickets simply to watch her step onto a stage. None of the guests at the gala knew that story. None of her co-workers knew it either. To them, Olivia Carter was just another waitress picking up extra shifts. And that was exactly how she wanted it. Near the kitchen entrance, another server approached her carrying a tray of appetizers. "What was that about?" he whispered. Olivia offered a small smile. "Nothing important." The server laughed softly. "You do realize half the room expected you to run away. Then half the room does not know me very well." She continued walking before he could ask another question. The evening moved forward. Speeches were delivered. Donors applauded. Crystal glasses clinked beneath the chandeliers. Yet every so often, Olivia noticed guests looking her way. The challenge had become a story spreading quietly from table to table. At one point, she passed close enough to hear a woman whisper, "Do you think she will actually do it?" Olivia kept walking. Her expression never changed. Across the room, Ethan was beginning to lose interest in the gala itself. Something about the waitress continued pulling at his attention. It irritated him slightly. He was accustomed to controlling a room. Tonight, for reasons he could not explain, he found himself wondering about someone who seemed completely uninterested in being noticed. Then the band returned. The lead singer stepped back onto the stage. Musicians adjusted their instruments. A spotlight swept across the ballroom. Applause rose once again. The evening's featured dance performance was about to begin. Guests turned their attention toward the stage. Ethan leaned back comfortably in his chair. Olivia paused near the edge of the room, holding a tray against her hip. The first notes drifted through the air. Soft, elegant, familiar. The moment the melody reached her ears, something flickered across her face. It lasted less than a second. But if anyone had been watching closely, they would have seen it. Recognition, memory, and somewhere deep inside a past she had spent years hiding, an old part of Olivia Carter quietly awakened. The music floated through the ballroom like a ghost from another life. Olivia stood motionless near the edge of the room, her fingers resting lightly against the silver tray. The melody was not just familiar. It was personal. Years ago, she had heard that same arrangement backstage before performances, before standing beneath bright lights, before applause became a memory instead of a reality. She quickly pushed the thought away and continued working. Some doors were easier left closed. Across the room, Ethan noticed her pause. It lasted only a second, but it caught his attention. Most people at the gala were trying to impress someone. Olivia seemed to be the only person there trying not to be noticed. The contradiction bothered him. He had built his career studying people, understanding motivations, predicting behavior. Yet the waitress remained impossible to read. One of his friends leaned closer. "You really think she is going to dance?" Ethan smirked. "No chance." "Then why ask?" Ethan took a sip of sparkling water. "Because everyone has a breaking point. Most people just need a little push." The group laughed. To them, the challenge had become a game, a harmless social experiment. But Ethan was more invested than he wanted to admit. He kept watching Olivia. Every time she crossed the ballroom, his eyes followed her. Calm, composed, unaffected. It was almost frustrating. Near the stage, the band transitioned into another elegant number. Several couples drifted onto the dance floor. Crystal chandeliers scattered golden light across polished marble. Expensive gowns moved like waves through the crowd. The entire room looked like something from a movie. Yet Olivia seemed completely disconnected from the glamour around her. While guests celebrated success, she focused on her work, refilling glasses, delivering plates, offering polite smiles. A young busboy approached her near the service station. "You okay?" he asked quietly. Olivia nodded. "Why would I not be?" "Because half the room is talking about you." A faint smile touched her lips. "People always need something to talk about." The busboy shook his head. "If somebody embarrassed me like that, I would have left." Olivia glanced toward the ballroom, toward the stage, toward the people who believed they understood her. "Then it is a good thing we are different." Meanwhile, Ethan found himself becoming increasingly curious. Curiosity was dangerous. He knew that. It was the same instinct that had built his fortune. The need to understand what others missed. The need to uncover hidden stories. And something about Olivia felt hidden. She carried herself differently. Not like someone intimidated by wealth. Not like someone impressed by status. More like someone who had already seen another world and chosen to walk away from it. The thought lingered in his mind. Then the master of ceremonies stepped onto the stage. The microphone crackled softly. Conversation slowed. Guests turned toward the spotlight. "Ladies and gentlemen," the host announced, Before tonight's final charity auction, we have a special surprise. Applause rippled through the ballroom. The host smiled broadly. And since a certain challenge has become the most talked-about moment of the evening, perhaps it is time to settle the matter once and for all. A wave of excitement moved through the crowd. Heads turned. Eyes searched the room. Ethan straightened in his chair. Olivia slowly looked up, and for the first time all night, the spotlight began moving directly toward her. The spotlight crossed the ballroom slowly, drawing every eye with it. Conversations faded. Glasses stopped halfway to lips. Even the musicians seemed to hold their breath. Olivia stood near the service station, still holding her tray, while hundreds of guests looked in her direction. For a brief moment, nobody moved. The master of ceremonies smiled from the stage. It appears our mystery guest has become the most popular person in the room tonight. Laughter rolled through the crowd. Ethan remained seated, confident as ever. He expected hesitation, maybe an awkward refusal. Perhaps an embarrassed smile followed by applause. The evening would continue. The joke would fade. Everything would return to normal. But Olivia surprised him again. She calmly handed her tray to another server. No rush. No panic. No visible discomfort. She simply adjusted the sleeve of her uniform and began walking toward the dance floor. The room grew quieter with every step. Ethan felt his confidence shift slightly. Not disappear. Just change. Most people walked into a spotlight hoping to survive it. Olivia walked toward it as if she had met it before. The polished marble reflected the crystal lights above. Guests moved aside to create space. The dance floor opened before her like a stage waiting for its performer. Ethan stood and joined her at the center. Applause echoed around them. Several guests raised their phones. Others exchanged excited whispers. This was supposed to be entertainment. A wealthy businessman dancing with a waitress. Nothing more. The bandleader glanced toward the stage manager for instructions. A soft melody began flowing through the ballroom. Elegant, classical, timeless. Ethan offered a polite smile. Still time to change your mind. Olivia met his gaze. Her expression remained calm. Why would I? The answer caught him off guard. Around them, the crowd leaned closer. The first notes drifted through the air. Ethan extended a hand. Olivia looked at it for a second before accepting. The movement appeared simple, ordinary, yet something about the way she stepped forward felt different. Balanced, precise, natural. Ethan noticed immediately. Years of business had taught him to recognize confidence. This did not look like someone guessing her way through an unfamiliar moment. The music continued. A few guests smiled knowingly, waiting for the awkwardness to begin, waiting for mistakes, waiting for confirmation of what they already believed. Then Olivia took her first step. The ballroom seemed to freeze. It was not dramatic, not flashy, just perfect. Effortless timing, effortless control. Ethan felt it instantly. His eyes widened almost imperceptibly. She was not following him. She was matching him. Every movement, every rhythm, every shift in tempo. Around the dance floor, expressions began changing. Smiles faded. Conversations stopped. The room was no longer watching out of curiosity. It was watching because something unexpected was unfolding right in front of them. Ethan felt a strange sensation he had not experienced in years. Uncertainty. For the first time that evening, he realized there was a possibility he did not understand the person standing across from him at all. And as the music rose higher beneath the chandeliers, Olivia Carter took another flawless step forward, while the spotlight that was supposed to expose her slowly began doing something else entirely. The change happened so gradually that most people did not notice it at first. One moment the guests were watching a waitress participate in an amusing challenge. The next, they were witnessing something entirely different. Olivia moved across the dance floor with effortless grace. Every step flowed naturally into the next. Every turn matched the music as though the melody belonged to her. The ballroom remained silent except for the orchestra. Even the servers standing near the walls had stopped working for a moment. They watched in disbelief. Ethan maintained his composure, but internally he was struggling to understand what he was seeing. This was not beginner's luck. This was not hidden enthusiasm. This was mastery. Years of discipline revealed themselves in the smallest details. Her posture, her timing, the precision in every movement. None of it could be learned casually. Around the room, expressions shifted from amusement to admiration. Guests who had been smiling moments earlier now stared openly. Several people lowered their phones because recording suddenly felt less important than simply watching. Olivia was no longer the subject of a joke. She had become the center of the evening. The realization spread through the ballroom like a quiet wave. Ethan felt it too. For perhaps the first time all night, he was not the person commanding the room's attention. Every eye was fixed on Olivia. Yet what surprised him most was that she seemed completely unaffected by it. She was not performing for approval. She was not seeking validation. She danced as though the crowd did not exist, as though she had stepped into a private memory that only she could see. The orchestra transitioned into a more complex arrangement. A few guests expected her confidence to falter. Instead, she became even more remarkable. The music appeared to unlock something inside her, something long forgotten. Ethan followed her lead almost without realizing it. The challenge he had initiated now belonged entirely to her. Near the stage, an elderly woman suddenly rose from her chair. Her eyes widened. "I know her," she whispered. The people around her turned in surprise. "What?" someone asked. The woman continued staring at Olivia. "Years ago, Chicago, the National Youth Arts Showcase. She was the star everyone talked about." Nearby guests exchanged confused glances. Another man leaned forward. "You mean the dancer?" The woman nodded slowly. "She was extraordinary." The whispers began spreading from table to table. Fragments of recognition. Half-remembered performances. Old memories resurfacing among guests who suddenly realized they had seen Olivia before. Ethan caught pieces of the conversation. Each word deepened the mystery. The waitress carrying trays through a hotel ballroom was becoming someone else before his eyes. Or perhaps she had always been that person. The final movement of the song approached. The orchestra swelled. Crystal chandeliers reflected across polished marble. Olivia completed a graceful turn and came to a perfect stop exactly as the last note echoed through the room. Silence followed. One heartbeat. 2. 3. Then the ballroom exploded into applause. Guests rose to their feet. Some cheered. Others simply stared in astonishment. Ethan looked around and understood something important. The spotlight had never belonged to him tonight. It had only borrowed his name until the woman everyone overlooked decided to step into it herself. The applause seemed endless. It rolled through the ballroom in wave after wave, growing louder each time someone realized what they had just witnessed. Guests remained standing. Some smiled in disbelief. Others exchanged astonished glances. The orchestra members themselves appeared impressed. Olivia stood quietly at the center of the dance floor, while the attention she had spent years avoiding settled around her once again. Yet nothing about her posture suggested she was enjoying the spotlight. She simply offered a polite nod and prepared to leave. That was what surprised Ethan most. Most people would have lingered. Most would have absorbed every second of admiration. Olivia seemed eager to return to being invisible. As she turned toward the edge of the floor, a voice called out from the crowd. "Wait." The room quieted slightly. An older gentleman stepped forward. Silver-haired. Distinguished. His expression carried the certainty of recognition. "You are Olivia Carter, aren't you?" Olivia paused. For the first time all evening, genuine hesitation crossed her face. The man smiled warmly. "I knew it." Nearby guests leaned closer. The ballroom suddenly felt smaller. More intimate. More curious. "I served on the judging panel in Chicago nearly 8 years ago," he said. "You were the young dancer everyone believed would become a national star." A ripple moved through the crowd. Ethan watched Olivia carefully. She did not appear proud. She appeared uncomfortable. The man continued. "You won every competition that season." Another guest spoke up. "What happened?" The question hung in the air. Simple. Innocent. Yet somehow heavier than everything that had happened before. Olivia lowered her eyes briefly. The chandeliers reflected softly across the polished floor. When she finally spoke, her voice remained calm. "Life happened." Silence followed. No dramatic speech. No elaborate explanation. Just 3 words. Yet something about them carried weight. Ethan found himself unable to look away. The older gentleman nodded respectfully. "I remember reading that you disappeared from the circuit almost overnight." Olivia offered a small smile. "Some opportunities are worth more than others." She left the sentence there. No details. No complaints. No attempt to gain sympathy. The crowd sensed the boundary and did not press further. But curiosity continued growing. Ethan felt it more strongly than anyone. Throughout his life, success had always left visible footprints. Awards, headlines, investments, public victories. Yet Olivia had somehow walked away from something extraordinary and never looked back. The idea fascinated him. The master of ceremonies eventually returned to the stage and guided the evening back toward its scheduled events. Guests slowly returned to their tables. Conversations resumed. But the atmosphere had changed. Olivia was no longer simply a waitress serving drinks. She had become the mystery everyone wanted to understand. As the crowd settled, Ethan noticed something unexpected. Despite the standing ovation, despite the recognition, despite the admiration filling the room, Olivia quietly picked up a serving tray and returned to work. She moved from table to table exactly as she had before, refilling glasses, offering polite smiles, helping guests find their seats. As though none of the applause had happened at all, Ethan watched her for a long moment. Then he smiled faintly. For the first time that evening, he realized the most remarkable thing about Olivia Carter was not how beautifully she could dance. It was how completely she seemed untouched by the need to prove it. The gala continued, but something fundamental had shifted. Ethan Brooks had attended hundreds of events like this over the years. Charity dinners, corporate celebrations, exclusive gatherings where influence flowed as freely as champagne. The faces changed. The locations changed. The conversations changed. Yet the pattern remained the same. People noticed him first. Tonight was different. For perhaps the first time in a decade, he found himself sitting at a table while everyone else talked about someone else. Across the ballroom, Olivia moved between guests carrying a tray exactly as she had before the dance. Yet every table seemed to stop her. Some offered compliments. Others asked questions. A few simply wanted to shake her hand. She accepted every interaction with quiet courtesy before returning to work. No excitement. No performance. No attempt to extend the attention. Ethan watched from a distance. The more recognition she received, the less interested she appeared in keeping it. That contradiction continued pulling at him. Eventually, he stood and crossed the ballroom. Several guests noticed and stepped aside. Olivia had just delivered a glass of sparkling water when she sensed someone approaching. She turned and found Ethan standing beside her. For a brief moment, neither spoke. The noise of the gala faded into the background. "You surprised me," Ethan admitted. Olivia smiled faintly. "That seems to be happening a lot tonight." He laughed softly, not the confident laugh he used earlier. Something more genuine. "You could have mentioned that you were an award-winning dancer. You never asked." The answer landed perfectly. Ethan shook his head. "Fair point." For several seconds he studied her. "Why did you stop?" Olivia looked toward the ballroom windows where the lights of Manhattan shimmered against the night sky. Her expression softened. "My mother became sick." Ethan remained silent. The travel, the competitions, the opportunities, none of them mattered as much anymore. Her voice stayed calm, matter of fact, as though she were describing the weather rather than a life-changing decision. "So you walked away?" Ethan asked. "I chose something else." The simplicity of the answer surprised him. Most people spent years talking about sacrifices. Olivia spoke about hers without bitterness, without regret. Nearby, guests continued laughing and celebrating, but Ethan barely noticed. "Do you ever miss it?" he asked quietly. Olivia considered the question. "Sometimes I miss the dancing." Her eyes drifted toward the stage. "I never miss needing applause." Ethan looked at her carefully. Those words stayed with him. Throughout his career, applause had come in many forms. Magazine covers, awards, headlines, public praise. He had spent years chasing bigger stages without ever questioning why. Yet standing beside a waitress who had willingly walked away from one, he suddenly felt uncertain about things he had always considered obvious. Before he could respond, the orchestra began another song. Soft, elegant, familiar. Several couples stepped onto the dance floor. Olivia adjusted her grip on the tray and prepared to leave. Then Ethan surprised both of them. "Would you dance again?" She raised an eyebrow. "Another challenge?" He shook his head. "No." For the first time that evening, there was no arrogance in his voice. No joke. No audience. This time, it would be an honor. Olivia studied him for a moment. And somewhere beneath the glow of the chandeliers, something in the evening began changing in a way neither of them expected. Olivia looked at Ethan for several seconds. Around them, the gala continued in a blur of music and conversation, yet the moment felt strangely separate from everything else happening in the ballroom. Earlier that evening, he had challenged her for amusement. Now he stood before her with genuine respect in his eyes. The difference was impossible to miss. An honor, she repeated softly. Ethan nodded. I realize that sounds strange coming from me. A small smile appeared on Olivia's face. A little. He laughed. Fair enough. For a moment, neither moved. Then Olivia carefully handed her tray to another server. The young woman accepting it looked completely stunned. Olivia simply thanked her and turned back toward Ethan. Together they walked toward the dance floor. This time, the atmosphere felt entirely different. There were no whispers, no hidden jokes, no expectation that someone was about to become the evening's entertainment. Guests noticed them immediately, but now the attention carried curiosity rather than amusement. The orchestra adjusted smoothly into a slower arrangement. Warm strings filled the ballroom. Soft piano notes followed. Ethan extended his hand once more. Olivia accepted it. The dance began. Unlike before, neither was trying to prove anything. Ethan quickly realized how much easier it was to dance when pride was not involved. The pressure he had placed on himself throughout much of his life seemed strangely absent. There were no investors to impress, no competitors to outperform, no audience to conquer. Just music. Across the ballroom, guests watched quietly. Some noticed how different Ethan appeared. The confident businessman who usually dominated every room now seemed content to share the spotlight. Others noticed Olivia. Despite everything that had happened, she remained exactly the same. Graceful, grounded, unmoved by attention. Near the stage, one of Ethan's friends shook his head in disbelief. I have never seen him like this. Another guest nodded. Neither have I. Meanwhile, Ethan found himself asking a question he had not planned. When your mother became sick, did you ever resent the choice you made? Olivia considered the question while the music carried them gently across the floor. No. Her answer came without hesitation. Ethan looked surprised. Not even once. She shook her head. I was sad sometimes, tired sometimes, afraid sometimes, but never resentful. Her gaze drifted briefly toward the ballroom windows where city lights sparkled against the darkness. People talk about sacrifice as though it steals something from you. Sometimes it reveals what matters most. Ethan absorbed the words in silence. They felt uncomfortably honest. Throughout his career, he had measured success through growth, recognition, and achievement. Yet the woman standing in front of him seemed to operate according to an entirely different definition, one that had nothing to do with applause. As the song neared its end, Ethan finally understood why Olivia fascinated him. It was not because she had surprised him. Many people had done that over the years. It was because she possessed something he rarely encountered. She knew exactly who she was. No audience could increase it. No criticism could reduce it. The final notes drifted through the ballroom. The music faded. Applause rose once more, warm and sincere. But this time neither Ethan nor Olivia seemed focused on the crowd. They stepped apart, smiled politely, and in the quiet space between them, a new understanding had begun to take shape, one built not on status or admiration, but on something far rarer, genuine respect. The gala slowly approached its end, but the conversations it had created showed no signs of fading. Guests continued discussing Olivia long after the orchestra packed away their instruments. Some spoke about her talent. Others spoke about her humility. Yet the people who had paid the closest attention understood that neither was the most remarkable part of the evening. The most remarkable part was what had happened to Ethan Brooks. Throughout the years, Ethan had become accustomed to admiration. He had built companies, closed deals, and appeared on magazine covers. People often agreed with him before he finished speaking. They laughed at his jokes. They celebrated his victories. Respect came easily when success arrived first. Tonight had been different. Tonight respect had arrived from a completely unexpected direction. Near midnight, guests began leaving the ballroom. Valets prepared luxury cars outside. Staff members quietly collected glassware and folded linens. The evening that had begun with excitement was ending in calm reflection. Olivia returned several final trays to the service area and prepared to clock out. Her shift was nearly over. She changed nothing about her routine. Not after the applause. Not after the recognition. Not after becoming the most talked about person in the room. As she gathered her belongings, a familiar voice stopped her. Leaving already? Ethan stood nearby, his tuxedo jacket draped over one shoulder. Olivia smiled. Unlike some people, I have work in the morning. Ethan laughed. Fair enough. For a moment, they stood quietly together. Through the large windows behind them, Manhattan sparkled beneath the night sky. Thousands of lights stretched across the city like stars. "Can I ask you one last question?" Ethan said. Olivia nodded. "You have asked several already. One more." She folded her arms playfully. "Go ahead." Ethan looked toward the empty dance floor. When everyone was watching tonight, when the applause started, when they finally saw what you could do, what did it feel like? Olivia followed his gaze. The ballroom looked completely different now. Quiet. Almost ordinary. She thought about the question carefully. Then she answered. "Nothing changed." Ethan frowned slightly. "Nothing." She shook her head. "I was the same person before they noticed me." Her voice remained soft. "And I was the same person after." The answer settled between them. Simple. Honest. Powerful. Ethan slowly nodded. For the first time, he truly understood. So much of his life had been spent chasing recognition. Bigger achievements. Bigger audiences. Bigger victories. Yet the woman standing beside him had discovered something far more valuable. Her worth had never depended on whether anyone was paying attention. Outside, a cool breeze moved through the city streets. Olivia adjusted her coat and started toward the exit. After a few steps, she paused and looked back. "Good night, Ethan." "Good night, Olivia." She disappeared into the flow of New York City, just another face among millions. Yet somehow the city felt different after she left. Ethan remained by the window for several minutes, watching the lights beyond the glass. Then a small smile appeared. The evening had started with a challenge. It ended with a lesson. Some people spend their lives chasing the spotlight. Others carry a light within them so bright that the spotlight eventually finds them. And the quiet ones, the ones the world overlooks first, are often the ones nobody forgets in the end.